Hello everyone, welcome to the Lazy Kitchen. Today we're going to make a generic African peanut soup, and there are many reasons why I like that recipe. One of them is because you can be pretty sloppy and usually it still turns out good, so it's a wonderful thing if you're a busy cook or if you're a new cook. The other thing is I'm an omnivore and I have very few vegetarian or vegan recipes in my repertoire. This happens to be one of them, so it always bails me out if I have people coming over and I know I need to cook along those lines. For those of you who are new, welcome or welcome back to the Lazy Kitchen. This is a place for those of us who don't have a lot of time, energy, interest, or expertise in cooking, but we still want to make a healthy, balanced, affordable meal that doesn't require a lot of prep and cleanup. So let's talk about what we're going to need today. You can make this stovetop. This is a recipe that will probably cook, if you keep it on the stovetop, it'll be done in about an hour or less. And if you have it on a crock pot type of function, it's going to be maybe 2 or 3 hours depending on how soft you like it. Just for the sake of ease of recording here in our space, I'm going to use my electric cooker that has both a saute and a slow cook function, but you can do on whatever you have, you can do it in. So let's review quickly our 3 rules. Lazy, everyone's favorite rule, 10 minutes or less. We hold ourselves accountable with the iPad. No prep, no cleanup, we do everything in one dish. Thrifty, we're going to try to keep this as affordable as we can and not sacrifice nutritional value in the end. Healthy, that's my most important rule. We want to have this be an all-in-one meal that has a good balanced protein, that has healthy sources of carbohydrate. Incidentally, this recipe, like all the recipes in my house, have to be gluten-free. And we want to have a lot of plants, vegetables, and that's often where we fall short when we try to make a quick all-in-one meal. So let's look at the ingredients. The good news about this recipe too is that it's very versatile. It's one of those poor man's dishes that's used in large parts of territory, so people will tweak that depending on what they have available. So this is a very loose recipe. It's a template, you use it and then you modify it based on what you have available on any given day. So let's talk a little about the protein. The protein is going to come primarily in this vegan dish from the peanuts. We're going to use both peanut butter as well as regular peanuts. We'll use those at the end as a garnish, otherwise they get soggy. If you want to modify this, to add protein and you're okay not having a vegan dish, you can just throw in, little pieces of cut chicken or whatnot at the end. Peanut butter is an inexpensive thing. We're going to use almost a cup in this recipe. It's still going to be about $1 in the end or somewhere like that. You get the best quality peanut butter you can get, things that doesn't have oils added to it. They should just basically be peanut and salt. We're going to, for the starch bases, we're going to use a variety of things. I'm going to use a mix of sweet potatoes. That's very traditional for the African peanut soup. I'm going to use a cup of each, but let's say if you just had sweet potatoes, you can add more. I got a bag of these for $1.29. They came out of the freezer. I like adding a little bit of potatoes. I have some plain shredded potatoes. I think they have almost nothing added, so I'm going to use a cup of that. I just like the flavor of it myself. For those of you who like legumes and you're very tolerant to digest them, I've seen some variations of it where you add beans in there as well, and beans that don't have too hard of a shell would be ideal. Things like chickpeas or white kidney beans or lentils, if you soak them ahead of time and you cook this a little bit longer, would be adequate as well. For the vegetables, we're going to use half a bag of onion. We used up the other half for something else. So bag of onions, $1.20. This is going to be about 60 cents worth of onions. I had some pre-cut carrots. I used the other half of the bag. A bag is like now $1.50, so it's probably 75 cents worth of carrots. That's very common. You want to put something green in it. I think cut green beans works the best. That's another bag for $1.20 someplace. You could also use things like cut bell peppers, cut zucchinis if you have them available. You can experiment with that. And I really like to add, for both the flavor and also the nutritional value, I like to add some sort of leafy greens. It could be spinach, it can be, this happens to be kale. That's the bottom of a bag that I had. A full bag is probably like $2, so this may be like 70 cents worth in there. But spinach or collard greens would work as well. We're going to need some broth. I only had chicken broth on hand. If you want to keep this vegan, obviously you're going to use a vegetable broth. And then it's also typically the African peanut soup will have both some coconut cream. Get the best coconut cream. You're probably going to need maybe half a can. Coconut, you know, if you get good quality, is probably going to be between $3 and $4 a can, so that's going to be about a couple dollars worth. And you also add some crushed tomatoes. This is a can of roasted crushed tomatoes, nothing really added. Probably $1.50 somewhere in there as well. Last important is the spices. There are some regional variations. I would say for sure you want turmeric, which is pretty easy to find in any store. We're going to be pretty generous with those quantities. If you like it really spicy, you're going to add more things like peppers or cayenne. You can add garlic. And then you can play around, you know, if you have chili powder around, that goes well. If you have paprika, that goes well. Cumin goes well. So I would say that turmeric for sure is a base, and you want something that adds a little bit of warmth and spice, and that can be a lot of things. So what I'm going to do is I am going to start the timer, and I am going to start the saute. So, sorry for the mess here. So the first thing we're going to do is add our onions and start browning the onions. Okay. And you know, you're going to use the saute function of your electric cooker. If you cook in stovetop, you'd be like, this is where you put, you know, full throttle gas. And I had a dish. I have put a little bit of olive oil in the bottom of my cooker to start greasing it. My gas will start. And while this is getting ready, I'm already going to open up the remainder of my bags. And this recipe is very forgiving if you don't get things in the right order. It's nice if you can brown your onions. Short of that, pretty much anything goes. I am going to measure out approximately a cup of potatoes. I think that's all that was left in this bag. I am already going to add my sweet potatoes. Potatoes, it's one of those nutritional powerhouses, and sometimes we run out of ideas on when to use them other than at Thanksgiving, and that's really a shame. The good time to add your spices if you want to get the most flavor out of this is when your onions are browning. And so I'm going to add turmeric. We're going to put probably somewhere like a couple tablespoons of that. Going to give it a very nice yellow color. And what am I in the mood today? I am in the mood for cumin. So a good tablespoon of cumin. Oh, that's a big tablespoon. You can never go wrong with garlic, so I'm going to add a little bit of dried garlic. If you have time to cut it fresh, that's even better. And we're going to do maybe a little cayenne. You could also use ginger for the spiciness if you have some on hand. And I am partial to paprika, so just because I can, I'm going to put a little paprika. Okay, onions are very fragrant. So I am going to add my starches, just start browning those guys. to add my carrots. There we go. And green beans. You know, for those of you who've seen previous recipes, you know I always tell people to drain your frozen vegetable. This is actually a recipe where you don't need to do that. Adding the vegetable juice will work really well. And while this cooks, I am going to get my tomatoes ready. Oh my goodness, that smells good, and I'm getting hungry. What I love about those recipes is I don't always have a lot of time to cook myself, and we, with a gorgeous day, and we wanted to be on the ski trails, and so I can still do both because it only takes me 10 minutes. So I'm going to add my tomatoes. Those have a little basil in them. Good. And I'm going to get my broth ready to go. You can, the amount of broth really depends on how you like the consistency. I would say for the quantity that I made, which was about a cup of each vegetable and starch, you're probably gonna need a couple cups of broth or a little liquid to make it so it doesn't get too pasty. But you can make it more like a stew if you prefer. Then you add less broth, or you can make it more like a soup, in which case you add more broths. And so remember, this is a recipe of approximation. Good. If you have time to stick around, you can just let this go and clean up and wait until the liquid is boiling a little more to add the remainder of your ingredients. In our case, we want to get it done in 10 minutes, like we said we would. So you can add your coconut right away. If you need to keep this recipe a little bit on the lower calorie end of things, you know, you either use less coconut cream or you use a slightly reduced fat coconut cream. If on the other hand you are feeding a horde of hungry people, especially teenagers, then you use the full fat version. It's a very healthy fat, so you shouldn't be afraid of that. Good, half of the can. Good. And then very good. And I don't want to incur the wrath of the other person in the house by sticking a soup spoon into the peanut butter, so I will find very quickly a spoon in my kitchen. Same rule for the peanut butter. If you want something a little more hearty, a little more dense, you put more peanut butter. That's really a matter of preference. This is also the time you would taste it and decide how much salt you want to add. So I'm going to add a good like 3 or 4 tablespoons. I really like the peanut butter, and on this recipe I want to have a little extra protein. So I did wash my hands before I did this, so they're all a-okay. And then give this a good mix. And so you have, you know, this wonderful collection of healthy plants in there. You know, starchy, non-starchy, green, and then at the very end, I'm gonna add kale before it goes bad. You don't want to go too heavy on the leafy greens. You know, they tend to overpower the rest of the recipe. So very good. It has this like warm and nutty flavor. I'm probably gonna add. I like more like a soup. So I'm going to add a tiny bit of broth. Very good. Excellent. So at this point, you do one of two things. If you have to step away from the kitchen, you turn your instant cooker from saute to slow cook, and you use your seal lid. If you're going to continue cooking it on high for maybe like 30-40 minutes with an occasional stir, you're just going to put the lid and come back in about half hour and 40 minutes and check the consistency. The vegetables should be cooked but not soggy. It's just under 9 minutes. You still have a couple minutes to clean things up and let this take care of itself. You will, once you go to serve it, you addition the bowl and then you put the amount, you let the guest put the amount of peanuts on top of it. Obviously, if someone has a peanut allergy, you can make a substitution with either cashew butters, almond butters, sunflower butters, any other butter or seed that you want to use as a substitute will work. So I hope you enjoyed this wonderful, warm and healthy meal, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.